Hey, what's up you guys? So today I wanted to do a little video about all of the movies, TV shows, and books that I read/saw in the month of January. Overall, I read 4 books, watched 4 movies, and saw 2 TV shows. Let's just start off with the movies. So this past month, the Oscars happened, so I tried to watch some of the Best Picture nominations before the actual Oscars came on so that I could kind of make my own judgment as to which one I thought should win. So I watched Little Women, which is the story about these 4 women back in the 1860s who are just living their day-to-day life. And honestly, I've read the book and I loved Greta Gerwig's adaptation of it. This was probably the first time where I've ever seen Little Women done where I actually liked the character of Amy. Little Women is probably one of my more favorite classics, just because I find the characters to be very relatable, and overall I just really loved that movie. I thought it was really well done. I would give it a solid A+. It was really a phenomenal movie. All of the characters were amazing. Jo is super relatable. That is a very character-driven story, and all 4 sisters are so well acted in that movie. And as I said, this was the first time where I ever really liked Amy's character. I've always found her to be a little egotistical, but in this adaptation, although she did have a bit of that ego, she was also very relatable in the fact that, she didn't want to be compared to anyone else and she didn't want to be less than anyone else. So I really just loved this adaptation. I thought it was a really modern take on the old story. And again, I just love all of the characters, super relatable. The second movie I saw was Marriage Story. So in that movie, you've essentially got this married couple and they've got this son, and they decide that they want to have a divorce. And at the beginning of the story, they don't want to use lawyers, they just want to do it as amicably as possible. But then probably about 10 minutes in, the woman, I don't remember her name right now, she's played by Scarlett Johansson, she decides to get a lawyer, and so things start to just get messy from there. Overall, Marriage Story was a pretty good movie. It wasn't really my taste as far as a movie goes, just because it was hard to root for anyone in this movie. The only one that I was really rooting for was the kid. I just didn't want him to get too involved in this very messy divorce that was unfolding. But I didn't really root for either the mother or the father, and I didn't feel like there was a lot of resolve in the end. I still feel like there's a lot kind of left in the air, especially in regards to this kid and his life. It's very messy, and I just wasn't the biggest fan of the overall ending of the story, so I would give that a B. But I would recommend it if that is something that sounds like your taste. It is still a very strong movie. The characters are all very strong. Adam Driver, his acting, he plays the father in the movie. His acting was phenomenal. There is one scene in that movie where he essentially tells his ex-wife that, he wants her to die, and he just acts that scene so well, because as soon as he says it, you can see on his face that he regretted saying that. Adam Driver did phenomenal acting in that movie. Third movie I watched was Jojo Rabbit. Okay, and so Jojo Rabbit is this story about this kid who grows up in Nazi Germany. And so he's about 10 years old whenever, all the Nazi stuff is going down and World War II is happening. And he has a best friend. He has a best imaginary friend, and his imaginary friend is Hitler. And it's a very satirical view on Nazi Germany and what it was like to kind of grow up in Nazi Germany when, you were being told all of these things. It came across to me almost like, how we tell our kids fairy tales. That's what it came across to me as, with the way that they would talk about Jewish people. It came across like they were telling fairy tales, but as a kid, you remember that you kind of believe some of this stuff. So as these children, they kind of believe some of this stuff that's being told to them about the Jewish people that just simply isn't true. And so I thought that was a really interesting look on that type of thing, and how, depending upon what you're told as a kid, you might believe different things growing up, and that is how things like racism can kind of travel from parent to child, is through stories like that. And so I just found that I found it super fascinating, that movie, and overall I really loved the movie. I thought the child actors were really amazing. That's one of the first few times where I've seen like little, 11-year-old actors that were truly funny. The only flaw in that movie, I think, was that some of the jokes didn't necessarily land. So with those jokes that didn't really land, I didn't think that they were as impactful as some of the other ones. It's a satire. And especially if that's something that you are not comfortable with, is watching a satire of Nazi Germany, then I wouldn't necessarily watch this movie. So anyways, I really like Jojo Rabbit. So I would give Jojo Rabbit an A. Definitely go see it if you are someone who likes comedic satire. If you like stuff like The Interview, this is kind of up your alley. The last movie I saw was 1917. This was probably my favorite movie of the month. A+ is out the door for this one. It was phenomenal. The storyline overall is a pretty simple storyline. You follow these two characters. They are supposed to carry a message from where they are across no man's land to another battalion to essentially save, I think it was like 14,000 lives or something like that. And so, they take on this task of carrying this message, and it is a very point A to point B movie, but overall I really loved it because the cinematography is really what shines through on this movie. It's shot like a one-shot, so it's shot to look like it was one continuous take from start to finish. It was not one continuous take. There are different cuts in the movie, and if you've got a good eye, you can kind of know where the cuts are. But some of the cuts, it's hard to tell where they are. So overall, that movie was just phenomenal. And the way that the camera would go across the screen and you would notice things as the characters would notice things. And it was just so immersive. That is the most immersive movie that I've ever watched. You really feel like you're there. You really feel all of the emotions that these characters are feeling. It is just phenomenal. Everyone kind of has their own character and they stand on their own as a character. So overall, I really loved this movie. I think that everyone should go see it. Cinematography was just amazing. If you love anything about film, go watch it because seriously, oh my gosh, cinematography. And another thing, the sound was fantastic. The way that they used sound in this movie to, create tension in scenes and stuff like that was super fantastic. There were certain scenes where, they were like walking across no man's land and the music would subtly build up and up and up and you're just waiting. You're waiting for them to get to the end. And so this was just an amazing movie. Go see it if you haven't seen it. 1917 was my favorite of the month. Throughout this month, I also read 4 books. 3 of these books were in a trilogy. So I read The Shadow and Bone, or the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. Book 1 is Shadow and Bone, Book 2 is Siege and Storm, and Book 3 is Ruin and Rising. Overall, I really enjoyed these books. I'd probably give them a B overall. The characters I thought were all very strong. I do feel like in certain parts of these books, the pacing was kind of off. I wasn't the biggest fan of the pacing because there'd be moments where I'd just be super bored. And then at the end, I felt like the whole climactic part would happen a little bit too fast for me. But I did overall like the very end of the series. I liked the end of the series. I liked the little bit of resolution we got where it didn't feel like too much to me. As I said, I really liked these characters and I thought this world was really creative too. Another flaw with these books though is the fact that the world building was a little quick to me. There's a lot of stuff that I still don't really understand about this world. I felt like there wasn't a lot of world building. So I wish I'd seen more world building and I wish the pace had been better. But overall, these books were amazing. The characters are super fun to, just travel with. And so overall, I liked those books. But then my favorite book of the month was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this book is essentially about a woman who is an actress, and it's about her rise to stardom and then how she kind of kept that stardom throughout her life and how, people came into her life and how she fell in love and how, at the end of it all, how she's, lost it all. So overall, I really loved this book. It was phenomenal. If you haven't read it, go read it. So the way that it's kind of told is it's told where you go through each of her husbands. You go through her first husband and then her second and then her third. And each husband kind of has a different feel to them. And, some of them are good guys, some of them aren't. And that's just the way the world works. And overall, it was a phenomenal book phenomenally told. The characters in it are amazing. Evelyn, she was super sassy, and she wasn't a good character, she wasn't a bad character, she was definitely a Slytherin, and as a Slytherin, I just loved it. You know, I related to her, I related to that ambition, I related to that drive to want to get further. So overall, I loved it. Go check that book out if you haven't read it yet. Definitely one of my favorite books of all time. So last but not least, let's talk about the TV shows. So I watched 2 TV shows. The first one, most of y'all are probably already gonna know what that is. That was Parks and Rec. So I'm sure most people know what the plot, you know, synopsis of Parks and Rec is. You're just in a Parks and Rec department in Pawnee, Indiana. You know, it's kind of told kind of like The Office. And it really reminded me of The Office, but it was also super refreshing and different. I felt like the characters were all very unique. I especially love Andy. Andy is probably my favorite character. I also really loved April. She was probably the one that I related to the most. But Andy and April are probably my favorite. They're probably one of my favorite TV couples of all time, just because that's what I want. You know, I want the stupid, silly stuff. So anyways, Parks and Rec gets an A+ from me. Super funny, really phenomenal, great characters. Leslie Knope, I would vote for her for president, not gonna lie. So yeah, great characters. Another good one is Ron Swanson. He's super funny, he's super memeable. And I love now that I've watched this show that I can kind of relate to all the Parks and Rec memes out there. And the last TV show I watched was You, and I watched the 2nd season of it. I'd already seen the 1st season. And the 2nd season I really enjoyed. I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the 1st season, so I would probably give it a B+ overall. It's still an amazing show. It's still super fascinating, and I feel like it takes a really interesting look on our life and our society that we've got. But season 2, I feel like towards the end of it, the twists and the turns that it took just got to be a bit too much for me. Like the 1st season, it's almost kind of believable that this could happen, but the 2nd season, towards the end, I'm like, I don't know if this would necessarily happen like this. And so if you don't know what this show is about, it's essentially about this guy named Joe. He sees this girl named Beck, and he decides that she is gonna be who he's all about. And so he starts to stalk her and fall in love with her, and that's what the 1st season about. And so the 2nd season, you know, he meets a new girl and her name is Love. So that's kind of what the show is about. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. Again, the 1st season, in my opinion, is more interesting than the 2nd season, but it's really up to you. My opinions are my opinions. You don't have to agree with them. Thank you so much for watching. I post videos every week. If you found anything interesting that I talked about that you want to comment about, feel free to do so. If you liked this video, feel free to like it, and please subscribe and click that little notification bell so that you can see when I post new videos. Bye!